There is an Asante proverb in the local dialect that says that Odeshia nkwa akwedwane, meaning if the royal does not go to war, the servant flees. Well, I don't know if that is always the case in every kingdom, but let's find out in this story. Once upon a time in Ghana, there was a powerful kingdom called Abenfokro. The land was blessed with green forests, beautiful water bodies, gold, diamond, and every natural resource you can think of. The king of this land was called Kwaku Duah, who was a strong and respected leader, feared by all, and even neighboring kingdoms feared him so much. His voice commanded attention, and his warriors were brave. His enemies were many due to his power and how fearful he was. His wife and queen mother of the land was called Oheneba, who was wise, courageous, and kind-hearted, treating her subjects with love. Together, the king and queen had one child called Oheneba Kwaku Duah Junior, who also happens to be the only heir to the throne. When the prince was born, the people of Abenfokro celebrated with joy. Drums were played, people danced, and traditional drinks were poured to honor his birth. However, behind their happiness was a quiet fear. Because the king had many enemies, he and the queen had to make a difficult decision to ensure the prince's maximum safety. They decided that their son would never leave the palace for his safety. The young prince lived a life of comfort and luxury. He wore fine clothes and was taught by teachers in the palace. He studied languages, music, and royal traditions, but in his heart, he wished to become a warrior, which was but a fantasy. Every day, he looked out from the palace towers and watched the royal soldiers train. He often whispered to himself, "I want to fight." Each time he asked to join the warriors, his mother would gently say, "No, my son, the outside world is dangerous." And his father would add, "You are the future of this kingdom. We must keep you safe." The young prince grew into a handsome teenager, still with a burning desire to fight. The king and queen gave him everything he needed, but they were never willing to agree to this particular wish. What they didn't know was that the prince had a secret. At night, while they were asleep, the prince would disguise himself in simple clothes and quietly leave the palace. He walked through dark forest paths with only the moonlight and sounds of nature guiding him. He always went to a small hut where the Asafohene lived. The Asafohene was the chief warrior of Abenfokro. The prince would occasionally visit him at night, ask questions, and learn about old warrior share stories, taught him ancient skills, and gave him advice. The prince listened carefully and learned with passion. He often asked the chief warrior to train him, but the chief warrior was hesitant, knowing how the king and queen wanted to protect him. Eventually, the chief warrior agreed to train the prince. However, before the prince could begin his training, his parents learned of his secret meetings and sent him abroad, hoping to protect him. While abroad, the desire to become a warrior wouldn't erase from the prince's head. He thought of it day and night and decided to devise a strategy to come back home. He decided to return to his kingdom. However, he did not return to the palace. Instead, he went to the chief warrior. When the chief warrior stepped outside and saw him, he was surprised and asked in astonishment and fear, "Oheneba, what are you doing here?" he asked. The prince replied calmly, "I have returned to fulfill my desire. Please train me here." The chief warrior asked him to return to the palace, but the prince wouldn't return, knowing that his return to the palace would mean that he would be kept indoors and his security would be tighter. The chief warrior, seeing his desire, agreed to let him stay with him and train him. From that day, the forest became their home and training ground. Every night, they trained in a faraway forest to avoid being seen. The prince practiced with great effort and strength. The pains made him stronger. The bruises on his body fueled his desire, and the sweat was his motivation to keep on fighting. One day, the kingdom of Abenfokro was attacked by King Ayamba, a ruler from the north side of Abenfokro. He declared a war and sent his warriors to invade the kingdom of Abenfokro. The earth shook from the sound of their war drums. King Ayamba Kwaku Duah called for the chief warrior, who further called his soldiers to prepare for battle. But he sternly warned the prince not to come out because he wasn't perfect yet. Among them was a mysterious man wearing a mask. No one knew who he was, but because of the war, no one bothered to inquire. On the battlefield, this masked warrior fought fiercely and with much enthusiasm. He led a group of fighters to the palace of King Ayamba. They found a hidden path to the palace, broke their defenses and captured King Ayamba and his family. Meanwhile, the other soldiers had killed and captured many of the elders and villagers of the kingdom of Ayamba. When the soldiers returned home, the people of Abenfokro welcomed them with drums and celebration. They won victory over the kingdom of Ayamba and captured their lands. The king summoned them to the palace and wanted to reward the warrior who captured King Ayamba and his family. The chief warrior called the masked warrior, and he stepped forward, removing his mask. The crowd was shocked, as well as the king and queen and even the chief warrior himself. It was the prince. It was Prince Oheneba Kwaku Duah Junior. His mother cried with joy. His father stood speechless. The son they thought was abroad was the one who had captured their enemy. From that day on, he was no longer kept indoors, nor prevented from going into the village to socialize with his subjects. He was trained openly by the chief warrior and ruled beside his father, Nana Kwaku Duah. If you like this story, please don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. Let me know your thoughts about this story in the comment section. Until next time, bye!